this is a long quote, but I want to make sure I read everything that he said. So Cam Newton says, women lose value with more kids. He said, I just think that the reality to that answer is women's value get lower the more children that they have. And he referenced a conversation with one of the mothers of his children, explaining how he approached her situation when they were together. He said, I was telling her the guy that you're dating or will date ain't willing to love on these 5 children that you have. That ain't the guy for you, because when I came into your life, I was willing to accept you and whatever you had. He also added that not everyone shares that mindset, noting that some men may separate their interest in a woman from her children. And he said, there are guys that's out there that's just going to say, them ain't my kids. I want you. So Maurice, do you think that women lose value with more kids? And what do you think about what Cam Newton had to say?
I don't know. That's just a blanket question. I don't want to say yes or no. But what I will say with this is that I think he was speaking from his perspective, being an athlete with a bunch of money. And I think, like, as I heard him say it, and I know he got picked apart by a bunch of people, like he was just speaking from somebody who probably has so much to offer that his choice of women and everything he wants from women, he can kind of pick and choose who he wants because that's the situation he's in. And anybody who has a bunch of value, whether you're an athlete or entertainer or somebody who makes a ton of money, you would probably feel the same way too. But everybody's different. You know, everybody don't care if you have kids with somebody else, and they don't value a woman based upon the kids that she have. At the end of the day, it's just sex, and somebody, you know, got you pregnant, you had a baby, but it just is what it is. So I wouldn't say that they lose value, but I think what he was actually saying was based upon whatever he can choose, he would value that less than what he would with somebody else. So I wouldn't just give a blanket statement saying that just because a woman has kids that she loses value. But I would say everybody speaks from their own personal experience and personal perspective.
Yeah, this is a real interesting statement and an interesting question. When it comes to women, because a lot of it is determined on what does she have going for herself other than the children, right? What type of woman she is. I don't think that blanket statement, like you said, holds up in every case. I do understand that for most guys that are like premium guys or elite guys, a lot of elite guys may think that way, right? Unless she's just amazingly beautiful. If she's amazingly beautiful, it seemed like in this generation, people look past that. So I would say that it depends on what generation you're asking. In some generations, that was a problem. I don't think in this generation, it matters that you have that many children, because we see guys all the time dating people who got kids by other people, or some of the biggest couples already had children before they got together. So I think that's not valid in this generation, in this day and time. But there was a time when that was the truth.
Yeah, I agree with Mase on that one. It was a time when niggas like, yo, you taking care of her kids too, nigga? They ain't your motherfucking kids. Like, yeah. It was kind of like back then when niggas like, yo, you eating a pussy, dog? Like, doing eating pussy. Like it was frowned upon. I remember Murder got mad at me back in the day. Scared. What are you doing? It's like, Murder's pussy. He got mad. Murder wasn't with that. Now it's regular. My man told me, nigga said, nah, my bitches be loving me, kill I eat the asshole or pussy, all type of shit. My man, shout out to my man too and his wife. He has a wife. They was giving me a little bit too much information. Back to the question though. It depends on, I think it's like you said, my blanket question. I think Mase answered it correctly. It depends, right? I know somebody with no kids, right, who loves kids, but they just feel that they may have missed their time. They're a little older and they may not want to start from scratch. Like, I tell my niggas sugar dick all the time, and my niggas Sin and a couple niggas I know that don't have kids. I'm like, yo, just stick with the dogs and shit. Think about it, right? think about it, right? I'm not telling nobody's age. I'm just going to give a roundabout in between. I'm not saying that it's old or even close to it, but let's just say you 45 years old, right? And I'm not telling you, Stat, or don't get scared, go rush to have a kid randomly, because I know.
No rush.
No, years are creeping up. You got plenty of time, man. If you 45 years old today, right now, if you're financially stable, everything else is cool, and I understand it too. But like even like with me, I'm a hands-on father. I would go to every talent show, whatever's going on. You know, I stayed away from exactly grades and everything because my son's mother was a teacher. She had that down packed. But I'm talking about anything outside of school. My son been on more tours than rappers. You know what I'm saying? So imagine being 45 and having a brand new baby. You go to a parent-teacher conference at 61, like, nobody got time for that at 60. Like, I don't want to be in parent-teacher conference at 60. You go, when the nigga graduate college, you 70. Might be a little late. I can't tell people what time to start and everything, but I'm happy I had my kid at the age I did because I get to enjoy my 40s and 50s with a grown ass. So I ain't got to rush back and be nowhere. He can meet me wherever. Period. But I think, and Mase answered it correctly, Mo, you said it correctly as well. But like I said, I know a couple people who got a girlfriend that has a kid. Because they tell me, Cam, I like the kid a lot. But I can leave that motherfucker whenever I want because it's not mine. So when it's time for me to go, they could keep. This ain't me talking. I'm just telling you. Nigga saying.
Playing the message.
Oh my goodness.
I have a thought. I just think.
What's your thoughts, Stat?
I just think that Cam is kind of toxic. Not you, Cam. Even though you, I don't know, you could be, I don't know. But I think Cam Newton's kind of toxic because it's just, you're allowed to have preferences. Like, I don't think anybody should shun a man or a woman if they literally say, like, look, my preference is not to be with somebody that has a child. Like, if that's your preference, that's okay to say. But in return, saying your preference and then saying it as, like, women lose value by having more children with different partners and then telling, you know, your baby mom, whoever she was to you that, like, that man better love you based on the kids that you have. I don't really see the upside in saying that at all, or even telling her that. You could literally just say, hey, this isn't my preference, but we can move forward or not. I just feel like some things are just that easy. And I know there's going to be difficult conversations, but I don't think that needs to be communicated to that person or even just to women as a whole. Because I just feel like the more things that you say that come out that way, it just makes people look like, I know, like, to you or whoever may consider that, like, you're going to be considered a high value man or like creme of the crop, whatever it might be. But saying that, especially coming from a place when you have multiple children, like, I don't get how that helps anything.
Well, let me ask you this, Stat.
Yeah.
A man with 7 children, is his value high to a woman with no kids?
It's just, I'm not gonna base the amount of kids that he have and
so that wouldn't
relate
matter
that to
to
his
you
value.
that he got 7 kids?
I can have a preference, but I'm not gonna say that he's not valued because I think that a father and a mother are super valuable people. But I'm not gonna say that you don't have value because you have 4 or 5 kids. I can say I don't prefer to be with a man that has 4 or 5 kids because I don't have kids. But I'm not going to go and say...
That's what I think he's speaking of. I think he just used the wrong words.
Well, but this is what I'm saying. That's when do you recognize it as a problem? You can't just go around when you have certain platforms and just always use the wrong words. I think that also comes with accountability to be like, that is my preference. And I'm not going to tell a woman or a mother that she doesn't have value because she has multiple children. I feel like that's also your responsibility by having a platform to also, and we always talk about critiquing, and that's fine, but also watching how you say certain things.
Yeah, I don't think see, when it got to being podcasts and people not being skilled journalists, right? And growing into that journalism and being launched into journalism through superstardom from somewhere else, such as myself, such as others, you know, you had a voice before you even trained as a journalist, right? So there's a lot of things that are missing from those people, and you know, hopefully they'll find it. Like, at least I know in my understanding, I just said this yesterday, there's things I want to get better. I remember when I first started doing this show with Killer, the first person I reached out to, I don't know if he noticed, but I reached out to Shannon Sharp. In the DM, I was like, you know, what's up? Like, you know, just introducing myself in this space, like just trying to learn from somebody who's done it, you know, and try to get some tips. He never responded, but, you know, maybe he didn't see it, you know, but I think everybody that's doing this can use a little bit more hands-on knowledge. Pause.
Yeah. I just want to say that, like, everybody who has a platform, everything that they say is being heard and listened to, and it is powerful. And so I'm not saying, like, you're always going to be right. And I'm not saying, oh, just because I disagree that he's also wrong. But I do think that certain words do matter. Because even looking to when he says, because when I came into your life, I was willing to accept you and whatever you had, like, that makes it seem as if, like, I don't want to put words, but like bottom of the barrel. Like, I accepted you and what you got. That is so random.
Yo, go get, yo.
Yeah,
come on in, nigga. Come in. And bring your shorty. And bring the new girl. It's coming. Yo, let Offset in.
Great conversation.
Yeah, bring.
He would be perfect for this conversation.
Yeah. Don't do that. What up, Brody? What's good?
Hey.
What's that? What's good, man?
Okay, how are you?
Good to see you. Good to see you. Been good?
I appreciate your boys holding me down on this motherfucker. They don't never do no lame
Wait,
shit.
say it.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate these boys holding me down. They don't do no lame shit to me. They don't ever say no lame shit. They keep it 1,000.
Yeah, man.
Fuck with these boys.
Nah, we appreciate you, man. You good? Take my number, put it in your phone real quick.
Yeah.
Word.
I want to come on the show too. I'm dropping an album in April.
I bet. Say no more.
I definitely want to come on this motherfucker. Boys be kicking it real on this
Nah,
motherfucker.
you already know.
Yeah.
It's right on time.
Got it.
Yeah, go.
That's
And we ain't judging.
Yeah.
You can't. But there's just that's
It's
what
a new day.
words matter. Yeah, how you say them, all those things matter. But shout out Cam Newton because he is doing his thing. But I just think that there is a better way to relay what you're saying.
Let's slow this down for a second. Because once you look beyond the laughter, side comments, and constant interruptions, you realize this wasn't just another podcast debate. It quickly turned into one of the most revealing conversations about modern dating, parenthood, and the way men and women measure value in relationships. At first, it seemed like a routine viral topic where someone reads a celebrity quote, everyone reacts, and the discussion moves on. But that's not what happened here. The deeper the conversation went, the more obvious it became that each person was interpreting the exact same statement through completely different life experiences before their viewpoints slowly started aligning. That evolution and the reasoning behind it is exactly what makes this discussion worth unpacking. The conversation kicked off when Stat Baby carefully read Cam Newton's remarks exactly as they were originally said, making sure no one could accuse her of twisting his words. Newton's message was straightforward and left very little room for confusion. He argued that every child a woman has decreases her value in the dating marketplace. He didn't frame it as a personal dating preference or something unique to him. Instead, he spoke as if it were an undeniable reality that everyone should already understand. Then he raised the stakes even further by admitting he had shared that exact viewpoint with one of the mothers of his own children. Newton explained that he had told her most men wouldn't willingly step into a situation involving 5 children the way he had, saying that by choosing to be with her, he accepted her and everything that came along with her. He did acknowledge that not every man approaches relationships the same way, admitting some people separate the woman from her children and never view the kids as a deal breaker. Even with that small clarification, his overall position never really changed. In Newton's view, children created additional baggage that lowered a woman's dating appeal. He also presented himself as someone willing to overlook what he considered a disadvantage, almost implying he had made a sacrifice others wouldn't. What made those remarks explode across social media wasn't just the opinion itself, it was the fact that Newton wasn't speaking hypothetically or analyzing dating trends from a distance. He was revealing a deeply personal conversation he had with the mother of his own children. In other words, he admitted saying those words directly to her instead of quietly keeping those thoughts to himself. And that changes the entire conversation. There's a world of difference between privately holding an opinion about attraction and saying those thoughts directly to someone you're raising children with. The panel recognized that distinction almost immediately, even before anyone fully explained it, because the mood noticeably shifted as soon as Stat Baby finished reading the quote. Suddenly, this wasn't just another viral headline people were reacting to. Everyone realized they were discussing comments that carried real emotional weight inside a real family. That's why the conversation instantly became far more serious than anyone expected. Mase was the first to respond, and his take ended up being much more nuanced than many people anticipated. Instead of choosing one extreme or the other, he avoided turning it into a simple right or wrong debate. Rather than attacking Newton outright, he focused on explaining the environment Newton comes from. His argument was that someone with Newton's level of wealth, fame, and influence naturally has dating opportunities that most people will never experience. Because of that, Mase suggested elite athletes, entertainers, and highly successful people often become far more selective simply because they have so many options. That distinction is important because Mase never actually argued that women lose value after becoming mothers. What he did was explain why someone living Newton's lifestyle might honestly believe that. In other words, he connected the mindset to Newton's personal circumstances instead of presenting it as a universal truth everyone should follow. Mase also reminded everyone that plenty of people don't view children from previous relationships as a problem at all. For many individuals, kids are simply part of someone's life story rather than something that defines their worth. He made it clear he wasn't comfortable making sweeping claims that motherhood automatically lowers a woman's value. Instead, he landed on a much more balanced conclusion. Newton may personally rank women without children higher because of his status and endless dating choices, but that's still a reflection of his own preferences, not an objective rule that applies to everyone. And honestly, that's a key point a lot of viewers probably overlooked the first time they watched this discussion. One of the strongest parts of Mase's argument was that he spent more time explaining the mindset than criticizing the person behind it. His point was simple. The more opportunities someone has, the more selective they naturally become. Whether those options come from money, celebrity status, or professional success, people begin filtering potential partners differently because they can afford to. That doesn't automatically mean they believe other people have less value. It simply reflects how their personal standards evolve as their choices increase. Looking at it from that angle, Mase suggested Newton wasn't necessarily saying mothers are less valuable as people. Instead, he argued Newton was describing how someone with extraordinary dating options might naturally prioritize women without children because he has the freedom to be more selective. That's a very different message than claiming every man should adopt the same mindset. Mase managed to soften the criticism without completely excusing it. He framed the belief as something shaped by privilege and circumstance, rather than an unquestionable fact. Stat Baby, also known as Treasure, then added another perspective that pushed the conversation even further. She agreed that broad generalizations rarely fit everyone, but argued that among what she described as elite or high-value men, this way of thinking is much more common than most people are willing to admit. She also noted that physical attractiveness often changes how those standards are applied. According to her, if a woman is considered exceptionally attractive, many men are willing to overlook the fact that she already has children. That single observation completely shifted the direction of the discussion, and this is where the debate really split the audience. Now here's where the conversation takes its biggest turn, because it raises a question that changes everything. Maybe Cam Newton's comments were never really about children at all. Maybe they were about leverage, influence, and who has the power to set the terms in a relationship. And once you start looking at it from that perspective, the entire debate suddenly feels very different. Here's where the conversation really starts to evolve, because it becomes clear this debate isn't actually centered on children alone. Beauty, financial success, influence, social standing, those are all pieces people weigh when choosing a partner, while having children is simply one factor in a much larger equation. And honestly, that's one of the sharpest observations made during the entire discussion. Instead of asking whether kids automatically reduce someone's value, the real question becomes how people who think this way define value in the first place. Once you recognize that physical attraction can outweigh almost everything else, it becomes obvious that children were never the only issue being discussed. Instead, kids became just one box on a much longer checklist that already includes appearance, personality, career accomplishments, reputation, and countless other qualities people consider when dating. Looking at it from that perspective, Cam Newton's original statement feels far less like a universal truth and much more like an incomplete argument. It ignores all the other qualities that ultimately influence whether someone is considered an attractive partner. Without directly confronting him, Stat Baby quietly exposed that missing piece simply by pointing out what his comments failed to include. And that's exactly why her response landed so well. She then expanded the conversation by arguing that dating someone with children doesn't carry the same stigma it once did. According to her, modern relationships often involve one or both partners bringing children from previous relationships into the picture. She used that reality to suggest Newton's viewpoint reflects an older way of thinking more than today's dating culture. That instantly shifted the focus beyond Newton's comments alone. Suddenly, the panel was debating how relationship standards have changed over the years. The other host, Cam, not Cam Newton, immediately agreed and pushed the discussion even further. He explained that years ago, men were often mocked for helping raise children who weren't biologically theirs. Using blunt examples and even referencing a personal story involving another entertainer, he described how society once viewed that role as embarrassing or as somehow less masculine. His message couldn't have been clearer. What people used to ridicule has become much more accepted in today's world. From there, Cam steered the discussion toward another connected issue, the reality of becoming a parent later in life. Speaking from his own experience, he said he wants to be present for every major milestone, whether it's school events, performances, or graduation day. Then he painted a picture of becoming a father at 45 years old. Suddenly, you're attending parent-teacher conferences in your 60s and celebrating a college graduation when you're approaching 70. He wasn't telling anyone how to live, but he explained why starting a family earlier makes more sense for him personally. He also introduced a much harsher reality by sharing conversations he'd had with men who intentionally pursue women with children because they believe it creates an easier exit if the relationship falls apart. Since the children aren't biologically theirs, they feel less obligated if they decide to walk away, even if they built a genuine connection during the relationship. That point reinforced one of the biggest themes of the entire discussion. For some people, children become part of a relationship risk calculation instead of a reason to commit more deeply. And honestly, that's probably not something many viewers expected to hear. Then came what may have been the most powerful moment of the entire conversation. Stat Baby openly called Cam Newton's mindset toxic, joking for a second that she wasn't talking about Cam sitting next to her before immediately shifting back to a serious tone. What made her criticism stand out was how carefully she framed it. She wasn't attacking anyone's right to have dating preferences. In fact, she made it clear everyone has freedom to decide whether or not they want to date someone with children. According to her, there's nothing wrong with openly admitting that preference. Her issue was with the way Newton presented his opinion, both publicly and in private conversations. She argued that he crossed a line when he transformed a personal preference into a broad statement suggesting women lose value simply because they have children with multiple partners. That's an entirely different message, and in her eyes, that's where the real problem begins. She also referenced Newton's reported conversation with the mother of his children, where he allegedly implied that any future partner would have to love her children the way he did if they truly cared about her. The way it was described made it sound like accepting her circumstances was some extraordinary act instead of a normal part of building a relationship. That was the part Stat Baby found especially concerning. Her argument wasn't about whether people are allowed to have standards. It was about the way those standards are communicated and how the language you choose can completely change the message people hear. Stat Baby's biggest point was that the exact same preference could have been communicated in a much more respectful way. She argued Cam Newton could have simply said that dating a woman with several children wasn't his personal preference and left it there, instead of turning it into a statement about a woman's overall value or making the mother of his children feel grateful that he accepted her circumstances. That's the distinction she wanted everyone to understand. The moment someone with a massive platform presents a personal opinion as objective truth, it stops being just a dating preference. It starts influencing how audiences, especially women, view themselves and their own worth. Mase then challenged her position with a simple hypothetical question. He asked whether a man with 7 children automatically loses value in the eyes of a woman who has no kids herself. Stat Baby's response clarified her argument even more. She said she would never judge a man's value solely because he has several children, since she believes both mothers and fathers deserve the same level of respect. At the same time, she admitted she personally might not choose to date a man with 4 or 5 kids because she doesn't have children herself. To her, that's simply a dating preference, not a judgment about someone's value as a person. That had been the line she was drawing throughout the entire discussion. Everyone has the right to personal preferences when it comes to dating, but turning those preferences into public declarations that someone is worth less is something entirely different. In Stat Baby's opinion, that's exactly where Cam Newton crossed the line, and that's why she fundamentally disagreed with the way he delivered his message. The conversation then expanded into an even broader discussion about responsibility and influence. Stat Baby argued that people with millions of followers have to be far more careful about how they communicate, especially when discussing sensitive subjects like relationships and parenthood. She also made it clear that it's possible to criticize someone's comments while still respecting everything they've achieved in life. That balance between accountability and respect became one of the strongest takeaways from the entire conversation, and honestly, it's a lesson every public figure should keep in mind. Her argument becomes even stronger when you think about how influence actually works. A private opinion shared between 2 people has one level of impact. The exact same opinion broadcast to millions of listeners carries an entirely different level of responsibility. Countless people are still shaping their views on relationships and self-worth, and public figures often influence those beliefs far more than they realize. That's why every word matters. Cam Newton isn't just another person giving an opinion among friends. He's a former NFL MVP with a massive audience.
Everything he says gets clipped, reposted, and circulated across social media within minutes. Many people only see those short clips without hearing the full conversation or surrounding context. When someone with that kind of influence presents a personal preference as if it's an undeniable fact, it no longer stays confined to his own dating life. It begins shaping the way other people see themselves, especially single mothers. Stat Baby never argued that Cam Newton wasn't entitled to his own opinion. Her message was much simpler than that. Influence comes with responsibility. When millions of people are listening, your words have to be chosen more carefully, because even unintended messages can affect how others view themselves. Whether that was Newton's goal or not, the impact can still be very real. And that's exactly why she believed his choice of words deserved to be questioned. Host Cam then offered an interesting perspective from behind the scenes of the media industry. He explained that many podcasters, including himself, didn't come from traditional journalism, but instead built careers in sports and entertainment. He even admitted early on he reached out to someone with more experience, hoping for guidance, but never received a response. His point was simple. A lot of today's creators are learning how to manage enormous audiences while they're already speaking to millions in real time. They're growing into that responsibility as they go. That moment of honesty added another layer to the discussion and slightly softened the criticism aimed at Newton. Rather than assuming every controversial statement comes from bad intentions, Cam suggested that some public figures genuinely underestimate the influence they have. Learning how to communicate responsibly isn't something everyone automatically knows. For many, it's a skill developed through experience and mistakes. It wasn't meant as a defense of Newton, it was simply another perspective worth considering. Stat Baby closed her argument by returning to one specific phrase Newton used when he talked about accepting the mother of his children and everything that came with her. She explained that wording like that can make it sound as though he settled or lowered his standards, which creates a completely different impression than simply saying children aren't a deal breaker. One version feels respectful and understanding, the other can come across as patronizing or dismissive. And honestly, that subtle difference sat at the heart of the entire debate. What made this conversation so compelling wasn't that anyone introduced a groundbreaking new idea. No one argued that having children automatically makes someone more or less valuable, and nobody defended disrespecting single mothers. The real takeaway came from watching 3 people with completely different backgrounds break down the same issue through their own unique perspectives before gradually arriving at a more balanced understanding. And let's be honest, that kind of thoughtful discussion has become pretty rare in today's online debates. By the time the conversation ended, the panel seemed to agree on one key principle. Having personal dating preferences is completely normal, But presenting those preferences as evidence that someone is worth less is where the real problem begins. And the bigger your platform becomes, the greater your responsibility to make that distinction crystal clear. That's probably the biggest lesson viewers should take away from this entire discussion. That lesson extends far beyond Cam Newton or this single viral moment. Every day, celebrities and influencers casually comment on dating, relationships, and gender roles without fully considering how those words might affect people searching for confidence, direction, or validation. What made this discussion stand out was its willingness to embrace nuance instead of feeding outrage. Nobody yelled over each other, nobody rushed to cancel anyone. Instead, the panel separated personal preferences from harmful generalizations and gave viewers a much more thoughtful way to understand the difference between setting standards and assigning someone's worth. That's what transformed an ordinary viral clip into one of the show's most insightful conversations in a long time.